All right, we're live. Final four time. Um, just like that, basketball has come and gone. Women's tournament, we're going to just jump right into things. Not too bad for us. Not too bad. Pat, you were 4 for 4 last weekend in your picks. I was 3 of 4. I missed one because I really stuck with Louisville. For some reason, I was bent that they were going to make the national title game. They didn't do it. They fell short, just like the ACC title game. Nonetheless, though, 7 of 8 between the two of us, not too bad for the women's tournament. This is the first time in, I think, 8 years that we've had all one seeds make it to the women's Final Four, and I think the second time ever that's been the exact same Final Four back to back years.
Yeah.
The other was 96, 97. So that being said, obviously going into this Final Four, we've been saying the winner of the UConn South Carolina game, that's going to be the national champion. And all signs kind of pointing to being a UConn repeat this year. Do we still think that going into this weekend? Texas and UCLA both have had some great wins. They're both in great form, as are UConn and South Carolina. But do we discount UCLA and Texas too much?
I feel like, yeah. I think it would be unfair to those programs and the seasons that they've had to just kind of automatically say, oh, like it's South Carolina's or it's UConn's to lose, right? Based on the results of Friday night's game. Um, but at the same time, I do feel like, I don't know, I'm a little split on this one. I feel like if UConn wins, I'm pretty confident they're going to just take care of business against Texas or UCLA. But if South Carolina wins, I'm really, really nervous that it's going to be a scenario where they just put every ounce of energy they had left into beating UConn and into winning that matchup. And then not like totally lay an egg, but they just don't have that final get up to like take them over the hump against a Texas or against a UCLA. You could kind of see it a little bit in the SEC championship. You know, South Carolina battled really, really hard against LSU in that semifinal. Um, they pushed through some first half adversity to kind of like distance themselves and then fend off that LSU rally. And then in the SEC championship, it kind of just seemed like they were a step slower at the beginning of the game than Texas was. So I worry that could be a repeat scenario where, you know, South Carolina really just throws it all at UConn, you know, and then a day and a half later, when it comes time to play either Texas or UCLA, they just don't have that high energy that they need to beat a really, really good team. Because, I mean, clearly UCLA and Texas are both really good programs. The way they're configured currently, I think UCLA could be in some trouble moving forward, given most of their core are graduating seniors this year, but still a remarkable run to make back-to-back Final Fours and potentially make a national championship game this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I like kind of the points that you're making there. Obviously, Texas, South Carolina, should they meet in the final, that would be a fourth time
Mm-hmm.
them playing. UConn and South Carolina typically have a non-conference game every year. That did not occur this season, so this is the
Yeah.
first time that we are seeing this matchup since last year's national title game. I don't think that it's going to be the same as last year. It was really quite clear UConn was the best team in the country last season.
Yeah.
That game was over pretty quickly. I still love my South Carolina pick. I really hope that that is what comes to fruition. But seeing this tournament kind of play out, all of these teams definitely deserve to be there. They all had great wins. They're all
Mm-hmm.
on great runs. But UConn's just a little bit better. They're just a little bit more crisp, a little bit more consistent. And I just find that really hard to believe that any of these teams can put in a perfect 4 quarters against UConn because they're going to have to. And we've seen South Carolina be a little slow, like South Carolina versus TCU that first half.
It was
Um,
dicey
Olivia,
for the first half.
I mean, if it wasn't for Olivia Miles kind of getting banged up, we don't know how that could have gone because she was having a great game.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it was only one player for TCU, but when you translate that over to a UConn team, which is a little bit more full than the TCU squad, can they compete? Can you do the same thing whenever you look at UConn against UCLA or Texas?
Yeah.
Um, Texas, we see match up very similarly to South Carolina. If South Carolina has those issues, Texas more than likely having the same thing. UCLA is the only wild card you could say out of this bunch that would be
Yeah.
a little bit of a different view for UConn. But again, you kind of mentioned South Carolina throwing everything at UConn. UCLA would kind of be doing the same thing, throwing everything at a Texas. Who's going to have enough left in the tank in that national title game? I mean, this is going to be a great Final Four, I think, on the women's side.
For
The
sure.
best teams definitely made it. It's kind of a bummer to not see any like Cinderella runs. I mean, we did have Virginia, but that obviously ended a little short
Mm-hmm.
prior to any of this. So no Cinderellas, but these are the best teams, and these are the most proven teams throughout the year. So I think that we are in for a very entertaining Final Four on the women's side. Still love my South Carolina pick. However, I'm not surprised if UConn does take it home. That team's just so good. Pat, are you kind of sticking with your pick there too?
Yeah, I'm sticking with UConn, kind of for the reasons that you listed out. Like, it's not quite the same gap that we saw kind of in that like late to mid 2010s era, right before the South Carolina emergence with Aja Wilson and Don Staley, where it was clearly like UConn and then everybody else, minus that one season where Mississippi State upset them in the Final Four. That was nuts. But it kind of does seem this year, at least, like UConn is just a step quicker, step more polished than the other teams in the field. And yes, that gap is really, really narrow, but basketball is a game of fine margins. And, if you come out and, like you said, start slow, or let's say, I don't know, Sarah Strong is able to get Okot in foul trouble early, right? Then what are you able to do if you're South Carolina? How are you going to be able to effectively counter that? And I think Dawn Staley's got a real challenge on her hands in balancing that as best as she can.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. We'll take a little intermission from basketball. We'll head over to baseball. Not a lot to go over with our conference play other than our rankings.
Mm-hmm.
Something very clear is happening. And maybe if Oregon State was in a conference, there'd be a little bit of
A
parity
little bit
up
of
there.
better grouping, yeah.
However, they're not, so they don't get the points from it. But our top three teams are Florida, Florida State, UCF, all separated by 3 points.
Mm-hmm.
They are also our only Florida teams in our conference. Is this indicative of college baseball and kind of the direction that this is going? I mean, yes, we still have Oregon State, who in like earlier 2000s was a very good team. But no real Midwest contenders. Like usually there'd be like at least one or two.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's really localizing further and further south. Is that just how baseball is going? Even a non-pac-south team in Georgia.
Yeah,
Georgia
Georgia's
wasn't
really
very
good.
good for a long period of time. Now they are a definite top 15 team in the country. Is it just fully migrating? Is that just a sport now?
Yeah, I feel like especially in the NIL era, it's one of those things where like even if talent does, let's say, escape like the greater Southeast in terms of these kids committing to, I don't know, let's say like a Louisville or somewhere like that, where I mean I know Kentucky's in the SEC, but I don't really consider Kentucky like purely the Southeast,
Yeah.
or even a program like Kentucky that's kind of like Georgia. They were up and down for a few years there, and now they're finally finding that consistency again. Um, I just feel like with NIL, a lot of these kids are getting funneled into the programs that have the most money. And that just happens to be a handful of SEC, ACC, and Big 12 schools where you're seeing that real talent concentration in the Southeast slash Texas, right? Um, whether that's good for the sport or not, I think might be a discussion for a different day or a different time. Um, but I just feel like that is one of the realities that we are slowly progressing towards. Because even schools that are kind of right on that, let's say like fringy borderline, like a Virginia, right, where it is a southern state, but not really like in that true, southern belt, they're slipping a little bit in terms of their position, where they were a dominant ACC team, making the CWS pretty consistently during the 2010s. But they've had some up and down years here recently, and you've seen teams like Duke pass them over, like Wake Forest pass them over, that weren't these traditional baseball powers.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think, and you bring up that point with the NIL that, this era, like, it wouldn't surprise me if teams and schools, like, we see more specialization. I feel like the NIL currently is, you're still hitting broad.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you look at the early 2000s, you did have teams that did specialize in their certain thing. Like, a
Yeah.
lot of the athletic department revenue did go to their winningest sport. NIL, I feel like, has kind of opened the umbrella a little bit, and I would not be shocked if maybe the umbrella gets closed again, and then we do funnel back into, like, yes, everyone wants a good football program because that's where the money is. Men's basketball kind of as well,
Yeah. Those are your two
but
money sports for sure.
also, like, well, if you have a decent football team and a bad men's basketball team, maybe we funnel in more into baseball and then really focus on trying to have a winner on the field, or maybe like in an Oklahoma case, just keep feeding that monster of a softball program,
Mm-hmm.
just continue to be just super, super dominant. Um, really have your specializing sports. Like, we could see that. I get it, maybe not begin to emerge, because kind of in a way it has,
Yeah.
but maybe continue to become more prominent as we kind of traverse into NIL even further. I mean, still a lot to be figured out. And obviously during football season, we talk way more in depth during then for that big monster, but it's, it remains to be seen kind of how these schools continue to traverse this period of time. Um, that being said, I'm going to give you some quick hits here.
Mm.
Going to men's basketball, but not the tournament. We're going to hit
Ooh,
NIT real
okay.
quick. So obviously we have our 4 remaining teams for the NIT. That is in Indianapolis this weekend as well, beginning tomorrow, Thursday, April 2nd, depending on whenever you're listening to this.
Mm-hmm.
We have New Mexico and Tulsa, and Illinois State and Auburn. Auburn, kind of an interesting one. Didn't really know where they were going to end up. Obviously, in the transition year that was the Bruce Pearl saga, they have a chance to win a trophy in a tournament in the postseason. That would be huge for this program, and
Yeah, for sure.
what definitely would be a down year for what they've been putting on the court lately. Illinois State, this would be massive for a program like that. And then Tulsa and New Mexico, 2 mid-major teams that have made some noise. New Mexico, a little bit more sustained. Tulsa, not as long, but has definitely been building up their program in the American, which currently has a power vacuum for
Mm-hmm.
basketball. Um, so first game, New Mexico, Tulsa. Who do we have going out there?
I mean, we kind of talked about the NIT a little bit last episode. I know both of us picked the same team. So just in case you did not listen to that episode or you missed it, I'm back in New Mexico for this one.
Okay, and I guess piggybacking off of that, I'm also going to Mexico. Should I then ask who will we give the honor of losing to New
Yeah,
Mexico
yeah.
in the final? Illinois State or Auburn?
I'm a little torn on this one because I think TJ, and if you guys follow our Instagram, if you guys see, the posts that we make about mid-major basketball and things like that, like I do have a deep passion for mid-majors and sort of giving them their shine where possible. And this is a great opportunity for a really solid Missouri Valley Conference team in SIU to make a little
ISU,
noise,
ISU.
Uh, like they're obviously not going to get the same recognition as they would if they were like a NCAA tournament Cinderella. I think a lot less people watch the NIT, but still it is beating an SEC opponent and beating them on a neutral court. So that's a huge victory if
Yeah.
SIU can pull that off. Or sorry, ISU can pull that off. I don't know why I keep doing that. Sorry, Redbird Nation. Um,
Put some respect. Literally just had a playoff football run this
Yeah, I
year.
know. I'm trying to group them with the Salukis. We don't want to do that, like interstate rivalry. My apologies to Redbird Nation. um, Regardless, though, I think this will be a really close game. However, I do think Auburn, just because of their size, does have an advantage here. So I'm going to go with Auburn to win this game, but ultimately lose to a really good New Mexico team.
Okay. I was really kind of hoping you were just going to go with Illinois State so then I could play the other side and go with Auburn. Um, I think I do still need to go with Auburn here. Surprisingly enough, the line is actually larger for the Auburn game than it is for the New Mexico game.
Yeah,
Um, it is a 3-point difference. New Mexico's favored 3.5, Auburn favored 6.5. I would almost argue that the Auburn Illinois State game is going to be the more competitive game, you could say. I'm not trying to diss Tulsa by any means. I think that is still going to be a good game. I just think this Illinois State game has the opportunity to be kind of a classic. And I think it might fall down to just Auburn has been there in those bigger games, tougher situations between, not just this season SEC play, but going back to last year and even the year before
yeah,
with their tournament appearances. So this is a very experienced program that knows how to make their way into these high stress finishes. And I think that's kind of where Auburn's going to win this game. Kind of a late basket, free throw chances, 2 to 3 point game. I think New Mexico is able to probably get it done around 7-8 points. But as we mentioned before, this is just for the honor of losing to the Lobos. We have been Lobo truthers on this show since basically football kicked off last year.
yeah.
We were a big fan of everything Jason Eck and that football program did. Transitioning it over to men's basketball, still love what they're doing out in Albuquerque. So look to see them lifting a trophy and winning the NIT. Now for the tournament, the big boy tournament, the Final Four. Are we surprised by this Final Four? And I guess by are we surprised, should we be shocked that a 2-seed UConn, 1 year removed from back-to-back national titles, upsets Duke? Should we be that surprised?
I'm going to say no. And the reason I said no is because Duke was actually Florida was actually my early 1-seed loss. Got that one slightly wrong. They did lose, but I thought they were going to get through Iowa and ultimately lose I had Vanderbilt, not Nebraska. Whatever. But I also did not fully believe in Duke. And kind of part of that is because of the injuries that Caleb Foster and Pat Ngongba had. But also, it kind of has been, I'll say, like a theme or a trend in the John Shire era where when evenly matched teams, let's say, go on runs against Duke in high pressure or high stakes matchups, they have a really difficult time responding to that adversity and maintaining leads, right? Like, I mean, we saw it last year in the Final Four against Houston. They got out to that lead. They had the lead for most of the second half. Houston makes this crazy run, and boom, all of a sudden, a team with Cooper Flagg and Con Kneppel are knocked out by a very good Houston team, right? But a team that seemed like they were down and out in that game. Then again
Yeah.
this year, UConn's down by as much as 19 at one point. And then they just scrap, fight, keep it relatively close, let's say. I know it was right around 7 for most of like the last 5 minutes until that last UConn run. Um, but I will say I'm very, very impressed with UConn for not folding in that situation. You're getting it handed to you pretty good at halftime. Your 3-point shots aren't dropping. It seems like your offense isn't flowing the way you want it to. I mean, it's really easy to pack it up and just mail it in for the second half and be like, congrats, Duke. You're a great team. Overall 1 seed for the reason. Like, go ahead, enjoy the Final Four. But they fought, they battled, and then, I mean, that crazy last possession. With the steal by Caravan, the unselfish pass to Braylon Mullins,
Yeah.
and an absolute heave of a 3-pointer to send them to the Final Four. So it's interesting as a Big East guy. Like my personal feelings towards UConn, obviously they're one of my favorite team, Providence College's biggest rivals. So I always want to beat UConn, but seeing the Big East succeed and be in a good position, it's always fun. So I did pick UConn actually to win that game on my bracket, make the Final Four. I thought it was really, really dumb at halftime, but then, they made me look really, really great after that. So I wouldn't say I'm shocked that UConn made it this far. Yes, they played super inconsistent at times this season, but I think the talent was always there. And when you have a coach like Dan Hurley, you really can't ever be counted out of a game.
Yeah. So that's kind of the flashy team in here. We'll then go. You could say the Cinderella, although it's hard to say a 3 seed is a Cinderella.
Yeah.
Illinois, I've been talking about them all year, and obviously, then to me, this makes it feel like it's a very known and talked about team. Seeing them in person, seeing what they can do. I mean, they're very electrifying. They can score many different ways. I don't really know how I like them pairing up, especially with the fact that the flashy team in UConn, who's been there, who all the eyes are on, all the lights are on. I'm not sure if Illinois is built for that. If that was like a national title game, then it's like, this is it. Everything falls the way it falls. The fact that there's still a game after this, I don't really like that for the Fighting Illini. I think that's a little awkward for them. Flipping it to the other side of the bracket, you have Arizona, kind of America's team in a way, the one that everyone's kind of pointing to. They're the 1 seed. They look great, and I can't really blame them. But we mentioned this last episode. Are they kind of too fundamental? Are they too sound? Are they doing like everything too right now? Like, it seems crazy that you're going to give them a negative for that, but everyone seems to be pointing the finger now that Duke lost. It's like, well, Arizona's the best team left. They're the ones. But the way that they've played throughout the entire season, there's hardly been a blemish on their record and in their game. But that's kind of what March is, though, it gets crazy. I mean, you mentioned like the fact that UConn got to the Final Four, it had to be a nasty 10 seconds of like trying to force a turnover. They get it, they heave it, and it just goes in. And it's like, that's March. You can't practice that. Like, you can't practice for 10 seconds of pure chaos and then expect that you're going to shoot a 35-foot shot and it's going to go in. Like, you just can't practice that. So kind of in a way, I don't know if I like Arizona the way that you should and the way that these other teams or other people are discussing them with. And then notice the last team that I'm going to mention is Michigan. Probably the quietest 1 seed I feel like we've had in a long time. It's so much so that even myself seeing them in person, I can't really even say that much about them. But maybe that plays into their strength. They're going against the exact team I gave a lot of their, highlights to as negatives. Are you in a similar boat here? I mean, we obviously I already gave you the flashy team, but I mean Cinderella, America's team, and the quiet team. Like who do you like there? And I guess if it's on the other side of the bracket from UConn, then who do you like going all the way?
So I don't know. This was quite literally like the hardest game I had to think about during the pre-bracket process or pre-tournament process when the brackets first came out, and like fleshing out where I wanted to go. For people who do listen, if you guys remember, I actually pivoted literally mid-recording or mid-episode. My original thoughts changed my bracket to one outcome instead of another. Um, so if you didn't listen, if you missed that episode, my original national champion was Michigan. So I had Michigan winning this game. I had Michigan at that point. Um, I believe it was beating UConn, but then I changed it to Houston, and that didn't work out for me. But I had Michigan winning the national championship over Houston, right? And the reason I believed in Michigan is because they're tall, they're pretty fast, and they've got experience. And when you look at the teams who have won in the NIL era, it is older or more experienced squads that tend to have a lot of success here, and if there's one thing to worry about potentially, right, for Arizona, it's that one of their big contributors is a freshman, right? So how is he going to respond to, I don't know, adversity, right? It's obviously way different playing in the Final Four with this massive arena bigger than anything you've ever played in, backdrops that are way different. We hear all the time players talking about how different it is to shoot 3-pointers, to shoot free throws. In the Final Four because of how far back the crowd is set. Like, is Arizona going to respond to that? Right.
Yeah,
And I believe yes. I do believe this is the most complete team in college basketball. Like you said, it is a really, really safe team, right? Like, they don't turn the ball over a lot. They shoot at a pretty safe percentage. However, they do shoot a lot of twos and not a lot of threes. So that could potentially be an issue if it turns into like a run and gun game versus Michigan. Um,
yeah,
but I do believe because they play such clean fundamental basketball, like that is something that matters in pressure points. Like that's what got Duke. If Caden Boozer holds that ball and just waits to get fouled, or if UConn doesn't foul him and the time runs out, Duke's in the Final Four right now, right? But he panicked, I guess you could say, or tried to move too quickly, made a really bad play, didn't do fundamental basketball. And as a result, Duke is not here and UConn is. So
true.
sometimes, I don't know, I feel like it's good to be safe. Uh, Obviously, Arizona is not super flashy. They are fun to watch if you like watching good basketball, but they're not going to be playing like Phi Slamma Jamma, right? Like it's not going to be alley oops up and down the court all the time. Like there's a lot of dumps into the post, little baby hooks off of really good footwork, or mid range jumpers, which is kind of a dead art. So I do like Arizona to take care of business here against Michigan, and I do like UConn to beat Illinois. So ultimately, I'm going with Zona over UConn in a really close one for the national championship.
Okay. I I like that pick. I think that is a very Arizona pick, almost in a way. Um, just because of how impressed I've been with Illinois, I'd like to see them make the national title game, but I don't know. It just now that we're here in the Final Four,
Mhm.
like my pick originally was still for Duke to win it all. So obviously Illinois would have had to have lost. Well, now that Duke's out of the way, well then it's like okay, well maybe Illinois then keeps going and they get their flowers.
Yeah.
But we mentioned it off the podcast, and I'm not going to dive into it too much because there's a great chance that it's going to be a big point next week.
Mm-hmm.
But Dan Hurley is probably the most impactful off-court presence in men's and women's college basketball. Um, he is just kind of an enigma over there, and it's almost one of those things like you get him hot, the team, the whole
Yeah,
everything
it's
gets going.
infectious, you know.
Um, so I feel like now UConn is building off of that. So I like UConn to beat Illinois in the Final Four. I like Arizona to beat Michigan, but I think, and I faded them all year long. But I just said, you get Dan Hurley going. He's going right now. And you know what? I'll sing the praises if they end up pulling it out, but I think that they will, and I'm picking UConn. For as many times as I faded them, I like them here. Huskies, 3 out of 4 years national champions. So there you go. We will see it next week. There's only so much that we can miss now, so our percentages can only go up from here. So obviously, Flowers episode will have national champion in men's and women's basketball, and our literally official then conference champions for the Pac-South. So until next week, thank you all so much for listening and watching, and we'll see you all next time.